Hi, I'm Brian from Echo1 USA, and in this video I'm going to show you how to take your regular M4 wire harness and drop in an M16 so you can wire to the rear and use a larger battery in the full stock. First off, you just need to open up the gearbox. Once you have the gearbox opened, you're able to see all the inner workings. Go ahead and start removing the parts. Okay, now if you notice, you have the wire harness and the wires go to the front of the gearbox. See this little hole goes along the back. Black wire or any wire is at the lowest point possible, so when you stick the motor in, it doesn't hit. If you have it above this one and it's too high, you stick the motor in, you're going to cut it up and ground out and short out all your wires, and you could damage basically your gun in one shot. Okay, to remove, use the Phillips, move that small screw, don't lose the spring, pop it up and out. Now if you're working on your gun and you're cleaning your gearbox or whatnot, you don't need to straighten out the wires. You can just leave it bent like this so it's easier to drop in, kind of like the memory of the wires. It gives you an example. You can go ahead and put this aside once you take off the little spring. Okay. Now with the M16 wire harness, it does look different for the wire length, but just about the same. So go ahead, use the sliding contact, pop it in place. And you're going to look at the wires and you're going to say, how do I do this? First off, you have to look at how it attaches to the gearbox. You have a screw hole here and a little peg hole here. Screw hole here, peg hole here. Once you have slide contact in, go ahead, slide in the bottom part first, pop it in place, and you'll notice right here it's flush, and right here it's flush with the bottom of the gearbox shell. And you can wiggle it, it's not going to pop out or anything, so that's good to go. Put the small Phillips back in, and halfway done. Now you're going to notice all this extra wire. What do? And you look at the wires, so basically you have the red wire going down to the motor, and the red wire going across to the rear of the gun, and a black wire, like so. What we want to do is make sure the wire that crosses, or any wire that crosses the motor area, which should be here, how the motor goes up, is at the lowest possible point, just so you don't have it interact and get cut up. So feed it through. Like that. And you can use like a small tool, like a flathead, gently press down. And if you notice how I have the placement for the black wire on top, the red wire below, and if you do a check, like when you're doing this yourself, if you put the other half of the gearbox together, and if you look, and if you see the circle where the motor goes in and you don't see any wires, that's good. That's what you want. You don't want any wires in the way. And then for this extra wire, just stick it on top, curve it through and around like that. Make sure that your safety is able to move freely, and you might as well move this just a little to make sure you have room for the trigger. Okay, now you can pull the trigger, you don't have it catch on the wires. And don't forget about the tiny little spring, which can easily be lost. Go ahead and attach. Okay. Notice how I have the spring for the trigger. Now I just got to put the gun back together. And you will notice this part, people always ask about this. What is this? That's only for the M4 wire harness when it's going to the front. M16, there's too much wire in the way, you can't use it, so put it on eBay or whatever. Go ahead and put the gearbox back together. And before you put it together, notice how the piston is. That's wrong. It's not going to work. Once you put the piston in, you have room, so once the gear spins, it's able to grab and fire. Otherwise, if you have it like this and you force it in, it's not going to work and you'll break your gun. Now that you have the gearbox all assembled, first do a check for tappet plate spring, trigger spring, main trigger spring, safety spring, reversal latch spring, and the piston spring. Everything looks good. The wires are in their spots. Go ahead and put it together. Drop it in place. Double check the wires. Everything looks good. Do one last check on the piston. Press back. Okay, looks good. Go ahead and assemble. Okay, everything's good to go. Just a simple recap. Now I have an M16 wire harness, so I can use a full stock to hold a larger battery, or just any battery in the stock, compared to M4 wire harness, which was up front, which I could use any battery in a smaller handguard. So, this is Brian from Echo1, and thanks for watching.